All right, welcome. So this here's what's going to happen. During this talk, I'm going to encourage people to start all the way at the beginning again because some of you are going to come in midway in the middle of this live talk. But let me tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to spitball some stuff, and as I go along, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refine what I'm doing here, and then I'm going to represent it, and it's going to take a different shape as I go forward. But now here's the pain. Here's the pain statement. Um, you're thinking about spending, $500 on flights and $1,000 or $600 to $1,000 on hotel rooms and um, you know $300 or $500 for a conference. And then what are you going to get? Right? You're going to get sort of the same old tired speakers. You're going to get some of the old news. And then, some of you who are tennis exclusive tennis coaches like myself are going to have to hear about pickleball. And, some of you, I know many of you, and there's kind of a silent majority of tennis professionals that don't want to teach pickleball. They want to succeed at tennis. They want tennis to succeed. They don't mind pickleball. They don't hate pickleball, but they just don't want pickleball to succeed and take over tennis courts. But some of these organizations are promoting that. And then you could have an opportunity to go and spend $45 or $60 on a 2-day course that's all about making money, right? But who's going to teach that course? That course is going to be taught by people who work at elite facilities, who have nearly unlimited budgets, and then they're going to tell me and you, people who work on our own and have limited court space or limited control over programming, how we're going to make more money. And then as it turns out, a lot of those things sound like great ideas, but are they really practical? So when you have people who are making well over six figures, some of them more in the $250,000 a year range, and people who are making $500,000 at these super swanky clubs, and then they're going to tell you and I how we can make more money. Well, I even think that that's a little odd that they really want to get that's the message, make more money. All right. Because once we start making that our sole motivation, making more money, then I think what we do is we lose a little part of ourselves. So what I'm going to do here, I've got solutions. And one thing that I really would love to see is more cutting edge information getting out to you, the person who wants to teach tennis better, the person who wants to learn tennis better and wants to find a tennis coach that teaches these kinds of things. All right. So I'm going to kind of spitball it a little bit. I'm going to come up with a list of things that really matter. All right. And so the idea behind this talk is that I want to teach you how to be more influential. I want you from this talk to learn how to have a greater impact on tennis and your students. I want you to be a contributor to society. I want you to add value to people. I want you to be creative. I want you to help people to be astonished by how you can serve them. That's way more important. So I think it was Zig Ziglar who said, if you want to be rich, be in the business of making people rich. But the interesting thing is being rich isn't necessarily all about money. So think about that for a moment. Being rich isn't all about making money, because part of it is the richness of the experience. And especially if you're working with some of the younger generations coming out, they are far more motivated by having a great experience than they are about, loyalty to a place or the prestige of joining a club. It's a fascinating thing. So, like I said, if you're just coming in the middle of this, go back to the beginning, and I want you to watch this video in its completion. So the first thing that is a problem at some of these organizations is that they are not necessarily plugging into the best information. What they're plugging into is conventional wisdom, the things they've always taught, and they're not necessarily moving the dial. So one thing I want to encourage you to do is read a lot. And I've been studying a lot of neuroscience, and it has made a dramatic impact on my teaching. Okay, so the first thing that I would say is improve your value by reading outside of normal tennis literature. Of course, it is a good idea to read tennis books. Absolutely. You want to have a very thoroughgoing knowledge of what's out there. And yes, please, look at my books. But read about the brain, read about how people are learning, how people grow, what are some of the issues in life that you will encounter. The more you know about the brain, the more you will be able to help people in a lot of different ways. So anyway, so here's a challenge. Go on to Amazon and put, neuroscience in that thing and see what pops up. So I will, in the show notes on YouTube, go to my YouTube. If you're not on YouTube with me, then please go to my YouTube, brainsports.coach, and you can look at those show notes, and it will show you some of the top neuroscience books that I'm reading right now. And part of the reason why you want to do that is because you want to be on the cutting edge. 90% of what has been learned about the brain has been learned in the last 20 years. But how much of that has been disseminated to the public, you and I, right? So, we have to dig into that, because it's not just going to land in our laps, and there's so much to know. In fact, this last couple of weeks have been very exciting for me because I've learned a couple different things. So now, when you build into yourself new learning, and then you become more interested, then you become more interesting, and you also become more interested in those issues with your students, and then that makes a more rich experience. So that's number one. Make a more rich experience, right? By learning. All right. So here's one book that I think everybody should read. Limitless, right? And then here's another one, How the Brain Changes Itself. So I'll just stop right there. Those two books are very influential. One more, Atomic Habits. There's a reason why Atomic Habits has been #1 on Amazon for quite some time. So I see I have one person watching right there. Please tell me, where are you watching from? If you are watching this, please tell me where in the world you are, city and state. And if you have any questions or comments, please send those along. All right. Now, number 2 is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So part of the problem with a lot of what is taught at a conference or, at a greed session is they don't get into the relational part. And I'll tell you what, this is part of what really makes me very successful and influential with my people, is that I care. And so, it's those things like, so-and-so is sick today and going to miss their lesson. And when you text them back and you say, let them know that I'm thinking about them and I miss them, right? We'll see you next time. Be well, right? When obviously somebody's going through something quite difficult and you offer to talk about it, they might not want to talk about it. What is that whole thing right there? Connection is unstable. If you're on Wi-Fi, Charlie. I thought I was plugged into my router. Anyway, sorry about that. I hope everybody can hear me okay. So, supposed to be plugged into my router. So, it's how much you care that is part of what really astonishes people. And I will say this, that it's, when people are thinking about, okay, always making money, making more money, and then somebody cancels and they've had some sort of tragedy, but you're thinking about the money, then that's not a good place to be. All right. I mean, obviously, you don't want to lose out on that. Obviously, you have a policy in place. But when you hear that somebody had a tragedy, then when you can put that away, the fact that you wanted that money and really care about that person, that's most important. So I'll give you an example. I have a student who is a breast cancer survivor. And so when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she shared that with me, and she was gone from, being in lessons with me for maybe over a year. It was many months at least. So, and, periodically I would text her to, see how she's doing, check in. And every once in a while we would get on the phone and talk about her progress. And this is somebody who, I wasn't otherwise going to see them. They weren't going to be around the club. They weren't going to be in my circle. So I could just forget about her and go about my way and make money, right? Or teach pickleball or whatever, right? But because of the fact that I kept in contact with her and asked her about her progress, then I pretty much have a client for life. So one of the things that so now here's another thing. Now, number 3, okay, teach tennis incredibly well. All right. Always hone your skills at teaching. And there's a phrase that I like from Wired magazine, and it goes like this: wired, tired, fired, and not wired as in, on drugs, obviously not, but be wired. Dig into learning theory, improve your ability to teach every week, read and study and refine what you do. And then the job is not done ever, really, because every time you step on that court, you need to learn how that person's learning today. And, it could be that person's like in a euphoric state because something amazing has just happened for them. That's awesome. But that could affect their concentration. It could be that they're distracted because they just had an argument with somebody that they are close to. That's going to make it difficult for them to learn. All right. This, number 2 and number 3, this little teach tennis better thing is they're connected, because part of it is the empathy. It's part of, you have to understand the learning through your students' eyes. And some of our lessons become sort of mental health sessions as well. So the learning sort of goes by the wayside, because that person really needs to be out on a tennis court doing something that distracts them away from something really difficult going on in their lives. I'll give you another example. So I had a student who was kind of hemming and hawing about whether they were going to have a lesson. Maybe I shouldn't come today. And so I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And so she let me know that her mother did not recognize her for the first time. So let that sink in for a minute, right? So, okay. So that's a pretty traumatic moment, when someone's parent is in their first moments of showing symptoms towards dementia. It's a difficult moment. So I encouraged her to come out to her tennis lesson, and because of the training that I've done and learning about death and bereavement and end of life stuff, and also the life experience that I have with those things, then that tennis lesson, I think maybe we hit 50 balls the whole time. But there was a lot of talk about how to get through this. And so that's, then again, I mean, there's this loyalty, there's this thing that you build. It's this relationship between the player and the coach that's so valuable that, that person isn't going to fire you. They'd have to be crazy, So, sometimes you have to know when there's something else going on that supersedes what is going on with the tennis lesson. But, in terms of, actual, okay, well, that's not how you make money. That's not how you teach tennis, kind of a mindset. People don't prepare you for those kinds of things. So learn your student, read the signals of how they are on the day, learn how they learn that. So that's number 3, right? And then number 4 is be creative with what you have. So, like for instance, for a long time, I've been teaching almost exclusively private lessons. And that's because the way my facility was set up and the way, the transition that I was in from one thing to the next, that's what I could do. And people would say, "Oh, you have to run a clinic. You have to try a clinic. You do this, that, do that." Right. And I was like, "Okay, tell me about these clinics that used to happen here." "Oh, well, as it turns out, sometimes there would be 4 people. And then sometimes there would be 12 people. And then as soon as there was 12 people at the clinic, then people realized that they weren't getting the attention that they wanted. So then there would be 2 people at these clinics. One of them's a 40-year-old man and one of them's a 70-year-old woman. And it's like, okay, right. So you have a 40-year-old 3-5 man and a 70-year-old 3-0 woman. What are they going to do? Right. It's how do you run a clinic like that? So, I mean, you can, if you're good, if you're really, really good, you can make it work. But that's a really tough situation to have people satisfied coming out of. So in that situation, I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to grow this thing organically. So now my new model that works is, I have a private lesson, but then as I'm, developing my clientele, then I start to look for people who can be put together. And another thing that kind of violates the whole greed cycle is I have a junior that I'm working with that can't afford my private lesson rate. But as it turns out, she's very pleasant. She's a good player. So now what I'm doing though is I will teach her, and then in exchange for her lesson, then she's a hitting partner, which creates a really cool dynamic that's really fun for my student. So I have a junior who hits with the student, and then so she's like my living ball machine over there that I can say, okay, hit it over here. And I don't have to mess around with buttons to make that ball go there. And my student really enjoys being able to hit with somebody who's young and fit and can do almost everything I ask them to do. In fact, one of my clients was joking around with me that she's better than me. This is the kind of thing, it's kind of humor that I foster, right? And so, so be creative. That's number 4. Be creative. You have resources in front of you that maybe you didn't realize you had. And, be frugal, save money. That's his number 5, save money, right? So here's, for instance, I had this ball cart and I bought it, and it's made out of not the strongest steel on the planet. And the little crossbars kind of wore out, and the welds broke on them. So now I have a broken ball cart. So now, I've got an option. I can go buy a new one for $250, right? Or I can get it welded, right? So as it turns out, I have a friend who welds, so sorry if you don't, but getting that thing repaired. So, $1 saved is $1 earned. So, part of the problem is, okay, here you're going to go, and you're going to try to make more money teaching tennis, but you have to spend $1,500 or $2,000 to do that. So how much are you going to have to make extra to recoup that? That's a really interesting thing. Now, I'm kind of like doing this for free for you, right? So, I would appreciate it if you've gotten some value from this and you want to, buy me coffee and whatnot. That would be great. So, why not send $5 so I can buy a coffee or part of a beer, right? But number 5 is be creative. 4 is be creative. 5 is save money. And so what am I doing there? 4 and 5 kind of went together in that, I've got this junior who can hit with the adult. So now I don't have to hit. So now I can teach another hour or 2 on that day without getting exhausted. And if you're like me and you're starting to get a little bit older and you don't want to be on the court hitting for 4 or more hours in a day, and even if you have like some easy lessons where you don't have to hit much, it's tiring. It's very tiring. And so if you've got a hitting partner and you can say, all right, I will trade you an hour of training, and then you give me X number of hours of hitting with my students, then you solve 2 problems. And you actually create a lot more value and fun. So I think the most important thing about it is here are the important things, right? That junior, solves a huge budget problem because they are not a high income family. 2, it adds value to my lesson because I can stand closer to my student. Also, I can do a little bit of coaching with my junior, who's also getting more court time, more practice time. How many times do you worry about whether your junior is really practicing well, but then you have the opportunity to, supervise them as they're practicing. So that's awesome. And then there's the the fact that I'm conserving energy, and now I'll be able to teach an hour or 2 hours longer in the day. So be creative in how you do those things. And, one thing I like to do is kind of put people together. So as, when I find people who are compatible ability and personality, then that makes that a lot more easy to deal with, rather than having like conflicting personalities or people at dramatically different levels. That's a lot harder to manage and make that work. All right. So, so the next thing is, maybe I'm done with those things right there. So that's 5 things for you right now, and I've gone 25 minutes. But I'm going to come back another day, and I'm going to flesh this out a little bit more. And I'm hoping to get up to, say, 20 different things that you can do to have a greater impact on the people that you're working with. Because bottom line, what you want to do is you want to get more done in less time with less effort, and provide more value. And then finally, if in the teaching of the skills of tennis, you're also teaching life skills for success, then and you're also providing an outlet for mental health, then the value provided is amazing. And so I'm going to end with this statement. This is something I hear often from my students. This was less expensive than counseling. And then that's when I say I need to change my rates to $200 an hour. So when you think about it that way, that if that person signed up for psychotherapy, they would have to, pay, or the insurance company anyway might pay $200 an hour to that person. But, when you can provide that level of astonishing service because you care and you study, you know about how the brain works for real, and you don't get caught up in junk science, and you're creative, and you are learning about how the student learns, right? And then you're doing things in a way that are really efficient, then you provide a lot more value. And then one of the side effects of that, one of the benefits, is that you will generally be compensated more. You can ask for more money. But that's not the primary motivation. The primary motivation is to provide greater service and value and richness to those clients. And then they're going to appreciate that. And then they will also give you referrals. I get so many referrals. It's amazing. So, and I get people who observe my lessons, and then they come up after me, and they come up after my lesson and say, "Do you teach tennis? Can you teach me?" And I don't hold back. I mean, if I teach them 1 or 2 times, I want to teach them as much as I can, because I want them to go forward and play better and say, I met this amazing tennis coach. So anyway, thanks for watching. And this is going to be a series, and I will probably repeat myself a little bit, and that's okay, because partly I'm trying to teach myself, but I'm glad that you are willing to be here. And so please press like and subscribe. And if you're just tuning in right now, go back to the beginning and watch this whole thing over again, please. It's about 30 minutes, and I give 5 major points of things that you can do to make people rich with tennis. All right. So again, tell me where in the world you are, city, country, state, all of that stuff. And then hit like and subscribe. And then if you would be so kind, if you got value out of this and you would like to send me, coffee money, I would really appreciate that. Thank you in advance for doing that. All right. Take care and have a great day.